And welcome back to the Hot Lap. Is this the image of the Mexican Grand Prix? Well, coming up, winners and losers, that full race result. Sergio Perez, the race that never was and promised so much. Hamilton and Norris on their races and more. But let's first of all, based on that image, let's get into our winners and losers of the Mexican Grand Prix. So let's talk Sergio Perez. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you get out qualified by Daniel Ricciardo. Okay. But then he had an absolutely amazing start from, for going nearly into that first corner in P1. But alas, it wasn't to be. And he risked it all. And it came to nothing, didn't it? Up. Heartbroken as well was I for poor Sergio Perez, but not so heartbroken for someone that had an absolutely amazing race. The man of the race, I think for a lot of people, was Lando Norris. Yes, that big creepy cheery smile there. So Lando Norris, so qualifies near the back, I think 17th, gets up there, into the points, goes back, pits under the safety car, starts 10th, goes back to like 14th, 15th. And then just the passes this man was able to do was absolutely fantastic. And then he ends up finishing 5th. You have to wonder, kind of like Qatar, as to had he started on that front row, what would this man have done? Absolutely fantastic. But I think the other two men of the race, if Lando Norris was the man of the race, one of the men of the weekend, Daniel Ricciardo. Okay, big grin for Danny there. So he didn't, some people may think 7th is disappointing after qualifying so far up the grid. Essentially on the second row. I don't think so, though. I think he did absolutely fantastic. He outqualified a lot of people that, let's be honest, should have really outqualified him. He showed us that Daniel Ricciardo is very much back. An absolutely amazing weekend for Daniel Ricciardo, where a weekend where Tsunoda had the chance and slightly faltered. And last but not least of our winners and losers, another winner, yes, Sir Lewis Hamilton. Yes, he started 6th, a really average qualifying. He outqualified Russell at least. But then what a race, and a couple of really, really interesting moments as well, which we'll get into any second now. But well done, Lewis Hamilton. Fantastic. So this was kind of like just after the race start, where both the Ferraris, they were asleep after a stunning qualifying. They got off the line very, let's say, extremely averagely, didn't they? Very, very, very average, and then Verstappen just destroyed them both. It reminded me very much of like 2021 with both Mercs. I think they were interviewed. Martin Brundle said they were interviewed, or he spoke to the Ferrari drivers about whether they had a plan after that start. No, they didn't. And there we go. So Max Verstappen, not easiest victory, so to speak, because he had to do another race start, but he did cruise to the victory, didn't he? And Ferrari, well, he thanked Ferrari there, but if that was not the story going into the first corner, as you can see here, I think Sergio Perez is kind of, in the lead almost at this point. If you had a really long ruler, let's say, I think his car's slightly ahead of the others. But then he turns in very much like Qatar, and Lewis Hamilton and oops-a-daisy, there we go, out of the race. I think it was almost a miracle that one Leclerc didn't receive more damage other than a front wing, and Max Verstappen was pretty much unharmed going into the first corner in the lead. Imagine the roar had Perez been able to pull that off. And he just turned in and didn't realise, I think, where Leclerc was. Now, Hamilton did it as well, very much looking like rookie errors. But where you've got that happening, and then all these issues around track limits, where I've been quite strict, I think, between the white lines or penalty. Maybe the one, not real saving grace, an excuse maybe, or a reason, is it's very hard to see where your car is, because these cars are a lot bigger. You'd like to think that people are used to it, but maybe that's a thing with these new cars. But I got to give it to Sergio. He was in it to win it, but he risked it all, and it turned into nothing. But I can't argue that he owned up to his mistake in the end, and heartbreak for the Mexican fans, but also heartbreak for this poor Haas over there in the wall. Poor Kevin Magnussen. I mean, he was having an okayish race, but he brought out the red flag, and that second start, Lando Norris mistakenly, in the end, pitted, I think from 7th or 8th maybe, and went out into 10th under the safety car. Then it was the red flag, which I rolled my eyes at. I was like, oh my gosh. But then Lando Norris had one of the worst starts, one of the worst starts he's had this year. He needed a good one, but then he came back to pretty much be the man of the race. I can't help but feel, kind of like Qatar with Mercedes and Lando Norris, maybe, this is a weekend of what could have been for Lando Norris with his excellent race pace. But before we get into Lando Norris again, this is Lewis Hamilton on Charles Leclerc after the restart on the medium tyres. He had to make the move at some point. He made it stick. Fantastic. And so a few laps later, it was Tsunoda pretty much looking at Perez and thought, I'm going to copy that, and he pretty much did on Oscar Piastri. He was faster than Oscar Piastri, and yeah, well, where his team could have scored even more points, they didn't, did they? But there, potentially, if Hamilton's move on Leclerc wasn't move of the day, this most certainly was. Around the outside, Daniel Ricciardo fighting really, really hard. As hard as you can get these two so close to each other. No incident. Absolutely fantastic. And I've always criticised. And guess what? Yes, I've criticised Lando Norris on not being aggressive enough. Letting people, pass too easily. Not going for it. Well, let's just say I have a belly full of humble pie at the moment, because Lando Norris showed today to me that he can do it. Now all we need is him to do it regularly on a Lewis Hamilton, a Max Verstappen, a George Russell, on a Leclerc, on a Sainz, to get the podium in position to win the race, get that first win even. So that's the only thing I felt that was missing, and we saw that today. So congratulations, Lando Norris. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, fantastic. I was elated with that. So looking at the results then. So we've got Verstappen winning the race by 13.8 seconds with the restart. I felt Hamilton, I mean, he did do the fastest lap, didn't he? We'll see that in a second. He didn't do too bad, did he? Getting that fastest lap at the end, maintaining those medium tyres, despite Ferrari saying they're going to go off in 5 laps, and he just carried on, and the gap got bigger and bigger and bigger. But to be fair to Leclerc, I think third, coming into the weekend, after those first few practice sessions, I think he'd have taken that. Definitely, if you said to him after FP3, you're finishing third, that would have given him a smile. The same with Sainz. He didn't do too bad in the end, although Leclerc did have that damage at the start, and, well, despite the damaged front wing, he was going gangbusters, wasn't he? Sainz couldn't get near him. Norris fifth. Driver of the day, not necessarily the weekend, because of that qualifying faux pas and that horrendous start, but he kind of made up for it. Definitely driver of the day. Yes, those moves, absolutely stunning. Russell sixth, kind of anonymous, really. I can't help but feel a bit like his American race. Where was he? And where Lewis was able to maintain that medium pace, he really wasn't. So Norris managed to pass him. He couldn't pass Sainz. At one point, he was trying to pass Sainz, and he ends up finishing, 13, 14 seconds behind him. And, that Ricciardo had a good, I think maybe another lap or two, he would have got past him. And Piastri qualified, I think he started 7th, didn't he? But a very average race, again, for Oscar Piastri. But you kind of give him a bit more credence, maybe, because he's a rookie. Albon in the Williams, finishing 9th, and Ocon finally getting past that Haas in 10th. Gasly in 11th. Tsunoda, it could have been so much more, Yuki. Why? You could have been that 8th where Piastri was. Hulkenberg in 13th, holding everyone up. That one thing that Haas does have is serious straight line speed since their update. Zhou 14th, Bottas 15th. Kind of disappointing, really, after what was maybe looking like a solid weekend at one point. But Sargent, Stroll, Alonso, Magnussen, and Perez all DNFs. And obviously Hamilton scored an additional point for setting that fastest lap, which we'll have a quick look at now. And the fastest lap of a 1:21.3. So 0.3 faster than Verstappen, who probably had better tyres at the time. Albeit on the hards, but wow, I mean, that was something with Hamilton. I think he must have realised, I'm not catching Max. I need to look after these tyres, though, to guarantee second place, and that's what he did. But someone who could have finished second or third, could have been leading, but didn't, is Sergio Perez. So this is from WTF1.com. It goes, and it's quite interesting. It says, our jaws were on the floor when Sergio Perez collided with Charles Leclerc into turn one of the Mexican Grand Prix, went flying into the runoff area, quite literally shouted, not at his home race at the TV screen. Yep, I think we're all absolutely the same there, WTF1, completely. So after an incredible start to the race, from fifth, he flew past cars into turn one, and then kind of into Leclerc. And all three drivers were battling for that position. Unfortunately, as we all know, three does not go into one. And Perez was the victim of his own making there. So talking to the media after the clash, though, Sergio said, I've had some really sad moments in my career, but certainly this, as a race, is the saddest one because of the end result. But at the end of the day, this is just racing. I go very sad home, but I also get very proud of my time or myself. We gave it all. I knew that today a podium was not enough for me, and I really wanted to go for the win. I saw the gap and I went for it. Yeah, that famous, that Senna quote, which they all say, but it's kind of cliche and trope in there now, I think, at this point, because everyone, if you don't go for a gap, you're no longer a racing driver. Yeah, okay, enough. But moving on. So he admitted that although he didn't expect Leclerc to brake so late in the corner, he took the risk and paid the price for it. But in regards to the fans, he said, I felt, to be honest, I would have let them down more if I didn't go for it. I saw the gap and I went for it. I decided to take a risk. I knew it was going to be very risky, and I ended up paying the price. Risk, reward. It was a pretty high risk to take, but it was worth taking. Yes, I think it was, if you were thinking of winning it. I mean, at least he went for it, which we don't always see with Sergio Perez, particularly when it comes to his teammate Max Verstappen. So yeah, I mean, fair enough, and fair enough being honest. So in relation to there's that crash again. In relation to Christian Horner, this is from planetf1.com. So Red Bull Christian Horner is sticking to a supportive approach after what can only be described as a nightmare weekend for Perez. Yet he's seen his F1 2023 campaign unravel to the point where speculation has arrived that, well, a new teammate for 2024. I mean, there were even rumours going into this race that Perez was going to potentially retire. So having been out-qualified by Ricciardo in the AlphaTauri, the junior car, he was looking to undo that. And it all went horribly wrong, didn't it? So, I mean, very contrasting, Horner told Sky, of the Red Bull's, prospective outings. Another amazing race by Max today, total and utter dominance, but for Checo, just absolutely gutting home race. And he had a rocket ship launch, had so much momentum going into that first corner. You can't blame him for going for it and trying to take the lead of his home race. It was to put Horner, that Perez, it was put to Horner that Perez is making an unfortunate habit of attempting these moves, like Singapore and Japan. I think that Singapore and Japan were even more misjudged, I think, than this one, because it wasn't for the lead. He was going hell for leather. I'm not trying to justify his mistake, but I can almost understand that more than his silly moves that really weren't on at all. At least this one, from when you looked at when you just looked at the cockpit, you kind of had a sense of, I can understand almost why he did that. But anyway, he said, look, he's got 13 years of experience in Formula One, said Horner. And I think when you're going through a difficult moment, it's important to support him. And I think that he was having a great weekend up until that point, and he was going for the lead at his home race in Mexico City with a crowd that it's insane, the amount of support behind him. And 3 doesn't go, and unfortunately, he was just on the wrong side of it. So, and then Horner heaped praise on Daniel Ricciardo. So, from motorsport.com, Jonathan Noble, Norris putting F1 rivals in awkward spots, key to those Mexico passes. Norris said putting his rivals in awkward positions was the key to doing as well as he did. As we know, he had endured a an absolutely dismal qualifying in Mexico after making a mistake on that Q1 run. So he had an alternative strategy early on the Grand Prix on those softs. He made good progress to get up to 10th before the mid-race red flag that helplessly reset any tyre offset. However, in backing off to avoid a crash at the start, Norris tumbled down the order to 15th. And, well, didn't finish 15th, did he? So speaking to Sky after the race, Norris said that his feat was made even more impressive by the fact he had to battle and overtake some tough rivals, including George Russell and Daniel Ricciardo, which we need to see more of. Norris. Well done. Norris said, it's very special. It wasn't from 20th to 10th. It was 14th to 5th. It was against George and Alex and Oscar and Daniel. So it was against some quick guys and smart guys. But I played it all well. I played the overtakes well. I put them into awkward positions, and I managed to get past them all very quickly, which allowed me to end up in P5. Well done. And also another guy that had an amazing race, Lewis Hamilton. Sweet finesse. Key to the Mexico F1 runner-up. So Hamilton says he needed to use some sweet finesse. I think you definitely need it with that Mercedes car, if I'm honest. So following a mid-race red flag by the unfortunate accident that was very strange by Kevin Magnussen, Hamilton took the restart from third spot with the medium tyre as Charles Leclerc and Verstappen had opted for those hards. Now, he failed to make the most of that early tyre advantage to leapfrog Leclerc away, and he eventually managed to get past that Ferrari a few laps later. It says here that he set his sights on Verstappen. I don't really think he did, if I'm honest, at that point. But the world champion had a clear and obvious pace advantage and slowly pulled clear of the Ferraris. Now, although the pursuing Ferrari was confident that the mediums were going to go off, Hamilton managed to keep them alive and he bagged that fastest lap. Now, speaking to his former teammate, Jenson Button, he said, I wasn't thinking it was going to last. He said that final stint of the mediums, but I did some real sweet finesse. I was trying to drive like you. Hamilton's second place finish was a welcome boost after he got DQ'd with his identical. He finished second behind Max, albeit a lot closer. So what does this mean for the World Championship? Let's see. I don't even know how to get it from here. Results. What's this going to mean for the drivers' World Championship? No, I think that's all the drivers. There we go. So does it change the drivers? Well, Sergio Perez 240, Lewis Hamilton 220. So there's only 20 points behind, between the two of them in 3 races. Is that doable? Yes. I still think Perez has control of whether he finishes second or not, rather than Lewis. So Sainz in 4th, 183. Equal to Alonso, but I think ahead because he's won a race. Lando Norris, look at that, 169. I mean, I can see a situation where Lando Norris finishes 4th in the championship. 166 is Leclerc, 151 George Russell. So 151 Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, he's got a good few points on George compared to last year. Oscar on 89 and Gasly on 10. So that's not too bad. So if we look at the teams championship, we've got Red Bull Racing, absolutely dominant. Mercedes, I think 371. It's not secure. A decent couple of results by Ferrari could definitely change that. I don't think McLaren are catching Ferrari. That's what not quite 100 points, but not a million miles away. And I can't see Aston Martin catching McLaren, despite 236 for 256, 20 points. Because of Aston Martin at the moment, they're just absolutely nowhere. Alpine are 6th. I think Alpine are definitely staying 6th. Williams is 7th. AlphaTauri move up to 8th. Fantastic. Alfa Romeo and Haas potentially going to be last now after that fantastic result by Daniel Ricciardo. I mean, brilliant. So there we go. What an absolute race. And so let's remind ourselves of our winners and losers before we go. So, man of the race, winner, Norris, Lando Norris. Those overtakes were absolutely amazing. Finishing 5th, fantastic. But I've got to say, regrettably, our loser of the race, Sergio Perez. That first corner, risked it all for nothing, unfortunately, but I think we can understand it was your home race. Poor Sergio Perez, but fantastic for Lewis Hamilton as well, finishing second from 6th. That amazing move on Charles Leclerc as well. Not maybe as good as the Norris move on Ricciardo, but still. And speaking of Ricciardo, another winner, absolutely fantastic. Out-qualified Perez and finished 7th. He was up there fighting George Russell at the end. That's our winners and losers. This has been the Hot Lap. If you've made it to the end, you are an F1 champion. If you like and subscribe, you are a multiple world champion. Thank you so much. We will speak to you next time, probably for our F1 driver tier list. Yeah, he's going to be top and bottom of that already, I guess. But there we go. I can't say any more. But a really, really, really good race. Thank you very much.